Welcome to Comic Book Herald's Creannotators. I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of Comic Book Herald, and I'll be interviewing some of my favorite creatives on some of my favorite comics, graphic novels, or series, looking for their insights on the inspirations behind the work and ideas or hidden material readers may have missed. Today, I'm excited to welcome Rob Guillory, creator of Farmhand, one of my favorite ongoing comics since 2018. Farmhand invites us into a world of literal human body parts farming, where nearly all ailments can seemingly be cured by miracle transplants. In this world where new limbs grow on trees, there's all sorts of family and town drama, not to mention some excellent comedy and a supernatural mystery at the heart of the emerging science. Rob, thanks so much for joining today. Can you tell us initially how Farmhand came to be? What brought you to telling the story?
Well, I mean, prior to this, I kind of, I've been working 8 years on a book called Shoe for Image Comics, which was a really, really weird book. And I kind of, I broke my teeth. I cut my teeth in comics with that book. And after it was, as it was winding down, we always knew it was a 60 issue run, and we were coming to that in early 2016. So I kind of started thinking, what the hell am I going to do next?
Yeah,
I kind of dug out all the old ideas, and every creator has a ton of post-it notes with crap scribbled down on them.
sure.
So I took everything out and started rifling through it all, and hated everything I had. So
Yeah,
immediately just kind of started uh, jotting down tons of new ideas and new concepts, and eventually just had this really weird idea, this kind of image of a tree with body parts growing off of it.
hmm,
Um, and it was this really creepy, kind of striking image. And I immediately got the hook. It's like, oh, okay, so this is an organic farmer who grows human organs. That makes sense. And it just grew from there. For the next year, I kind of spent time just kind of developing it, shaping what the story would be. At the end of 2016, as we wrapped up Chew, about a month later, I wrote the first script for issue one, and it's been a few years since then.
cool. Very cool. Now, when you're developing a concept like that, do you start like writing out ideas first, or do you actually visually begin processing? You mentioned like the tree and the limbs. Do you start like actually sketching that before you even get to story beats, essentially?
It kind of depends on what the concept is. In
Yeah,
this case, I think I just started jotting down. I started a pitch document pretty quickly,
sure.
and just started writing down, and asking myself questions. A lot of it was just long walks in my driveway, of just kind of talking to myself and saying, okay, well, what kind of guy would grow human organs? Why would he do it? What's the world like? What would the primary usage be? And
Yeah,
it grew out from there. Really, it's going to be a pun, but it was very organic, how it grew
sure.
out. Yeah,
Yeah, it would have to be. It
yeah,
would
yeah.
have to
So
be given the subject matter. So Farmhand is your first big creator own work where you're writing and drawing, like you mentioned, coming off of Chew, incredibly acclaimed run, one of my favorite comics of all time.
cool.
That you drew the whole, I think all 60 plus issues, right? Was
Yeah,
all you. Yeah,
yeah.
which is, a pretty incredible run. How big of a challenge was it to leap from the art and storytelling side to doing it all on Farmhand? Because even on Chew, you have more of a voice, you have more of a personality, I think, than a lot of times art can be associated with in comics. Like you had all these written in jokes and you
Hmm.
think, right, clearly you were like getting to voice, your opinion, and obviously it's a collaboration between you and writer John Layman.
Yeah,
But now it's totally you. It's you and Farmhand. How big a jump is that for you?
it was pretty huge.
Yeah.
I mean, just on the I mean, for 8 years while I was working on Chew, it was basically me just kind of hanging out in my room alone, just drawing every day.
Yeah.
I just get up every day and put the headphones on and just draw a page. That was my goal for 8 years, and I didn't have to deal with too much of the business aspects of it. I had my own like career to manage, but as
Right.
far as like dealing with image, a lot of the press stuff and the Hollywood stuff, all that, I wasn't dealing with all of it because John was.
Yeah.
So the second I started doing all of this, writing the scripts, drawing the thing, and then managing a letterer and a colorist and a graphic designer, and dealing with image and working out marketing, and then starting to kind of branch out and kind of put out feelers in Hollywood and handle the press and do the conventions.
Yeah.
It's pretty darn intense.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, and that is fascinating. Like even because we so often like as fans and as readers take for granted, like, okay, you're doing the literal storytelling and that's a lot of work on its own, but it's all that whole business side of things is
yeah,
obviously no small thing. I was gonna say this for later, but you mentioned it, like the Hollywood side of things. Like you've already got from what I've seen in stories is AMC signed on in some capacity to look at Farmhand here. I know Chew has had like it seems like 1,000 different stories over the years.
it
Where,
feels like 1,000 different stories.
yeah, yeah. Like how did the experience on Chew, I guess, help you in that specific regard in terms of like, okay, I've seen what that property's gone through in terms of managing a business, whether it be getting it to Hollywood or just marketing in general. Like what are some of the bigger lessons you learned there that you're trying to use now?
Don't do anything we did before.
Yeah.
Uh, I think we weren't ready for the response we got with Chew. It was
Sure.
like I said, it was my first big book. John had been around the industry for a while, but this is really the first time he kind of just got to do his own thing.
Yeah.
And he didn't expect it to do anything. I was the young guy. I was only in my mid 20s when I started working on Chew.
Sure.
So I kept telling him like, I think this is really good. I think this is special. And he just kept telling me, I'm really worried about you, Rob. You're gonna get your heart broken. Um, and then it happened, and I mean, the second we announced it, it came out in June of 2009.
Yeah.
We announced it, I think, in February that year. The second it got announced, we started getting emails from Hollywood just based on the announcement.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that was interesting, and it wasn't like little small, studios. It was like big name, reputable people. But I think we weren't really ready for it. We kind of, we figured, well, we know comics, but we don't know Hollywood. So, they know what's best. So let's like just give it to them and let them do whatever they want with it,
Yeah.
which was a colossal mistake. Um, and I think we paid for it. And I mean, we had some cool experiences in the process. It was definitely like an 8-year journey of just learning what not to do and what to do.
Yeah.
Uh, so whenever I walked away from that, I think I was a little jaded about the whole thing.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, we had so many calls with people telling us, doing this typical Hollywood thing of like giving you, we're going to bring this one big name person in, we're going to bring in this guy, and it just never went anywhere.
Yeah.
So whenever I announced Farmhand, I immediately got interest from Hollywood, and I decided then and there, I'm going to be offensively honest, and try to scare these people away.
Yeah.
And if they stick around, then maybe there's something to them. And that's immediate. That's what I did. Was I just told them, look, this was my previous experience with Hollywood. I'm really not that impressed. I would be okay if Farmhand was never anything but
Yeah.
a comic. But if this does become something, this is what I want. I want to be involved. I want to kind of oversee things. I want to write some of the episodes. I want to be, controlling this thing. I understand there's like network considerations and things like that.
Sure.
It's a collaboration, obviously, more so than it is in the comic. The comics is very much, a pure vision that I'm putting together.
Sure.
Um, so surprisingly, that was, the folks that I was talking to with AMC and a few other people, they wanted that. They wanted me to be involved. They wanted my voice. They wanted me writing episodes. They wanted, they gave me more than I was expecting them to give me.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, so it's been a really cool experience.
Good deal. And where are you at, like, in the process currently?
I'm writing the pilot. It's been a slow process with the COVID and the lockdown and everything,
Yeah, sure.
but it's been really really positive. I've learned a ton, and the draft that we have so far is really solid. I think it's very true to the book, but it is it's the thing I learned writing it was, comics is a very limited medium in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
We only get 20 to 30 pages a month.
Hmm.
A few panels per page with a little dialogue sprinkled here and there around the images. When you're, versus like television, which can be, half an hour to an hour worth of just, a lot of things happening, a lot of dialogue, a lot of action. So, I was able to expand the universe in a way that I couldn't in the comic, which was cool.
Nice. Yeah. Did you have a lot of ideas kind of on like the cutting room floor just by the nature of comics that you're able to now sort of like resurface and build more depth?
Yeah, yeah, mostly character depth. There
Yeah.
was a lot of backstory, especially with the family. Like I knew, generational, curses and ties and trauma are a big part of what Farmhand is.
Right.
And I've tapped into that with the comic, but I knew there was way more with like grandparents and great grandparents and just like different wings of the family
Mm.
that I wanted to get into that I just don't think I have the time to in the comic.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's you have to in Farmhand you do that blend of using flashbacks sparingly
Yeah.
here and there to right to build both the mystery and sort of this family and their history over time. So I'm really looking forward to seeing hopefully how that comes out in TV. But so looking at the comic then a little more directly. You mentioned okay, there's this really it's a story of this family, right? And the father figure here, Jed, he's the proprietor of this human transplant, endeavor that is this miracle cure. But obviously, as Farmhand progresses,
Mhm.
increasingly it becomes, a bigger and bigger problem. There seem to be, and just from reading like your backup notes and some stuff and interviews you've done, elements of autobiography to Farmhand. The protagonist, for example, is a comics creator himself, right?
Mhm.
How do you decide sort of what to reveal from your own experience versus what to keep personal? What is that push and pull for you?
I think there's more in terms of autobiography. I think it's way more metaphor
Yeah.
than direct one to one. This happened to me in the comic. A girl broke up with me in real life, so like a girl breaks up with me in the comic.
Yeah, yeah.
Like not that kind of thing. It's more. It's very very metaphorical, and there's a lot of symbolism in the comic. Uh, and like I said, it's not a one to one ratio. I mean, even with the main character Zeke, I knew the second I made him a comic creator that everyone was going to say, "Oh, it's clearly Rob's doing himself."
Right.
But no, I'm actually like I look back. One of my favorite writers is Stephen King,
Mhm.
and when I look at his old stuff, my favorite book of his was Salem's Lot,
Yeah.
which I believe was his first, and it features, the stars are he's a writer. This writer who goes back down to the small town of Salem and gets caught up in all this craziness. And I always liked that. So I just
Yeah.
figured, I know comics, I know that kind of mindset. I'm gonna do that and just have fun with it. But yeah, I've gotten some flack, and people have said, oh, it's you're just what if this is real? It's like, well, I don't have like a body part. Like I don't have a body part form back home like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Not quite
We do have, some therapy to hash out, I think, if,
that.
if that's your
we're,
actual
we're
family
working we're
relationship.
working through it. Right, right.
Okay, good deal. No, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned the Stephen King influence, and there's definitely, like, in Chew to a degree, but in Farmhand, there's a real element of horror to all of this, like, it is inherently kind of gross, and I think you play that up both at for comedy, but also, like, it can be pretty, like, concerning the way there's these sort of
Yeah.
zombified, plant zombies walking around. What do you think it is about, like, caking the horror in comedy that you take to so naturally in storytelling? Is that something you've always done in your work, or is that just sort of like this is my personality? Or did you develop that even like on Chew? Like that was kind of a comedy book at heart, you know?
Yeah. I mean, some of it's just natural to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of have, uh, I kind of have, I can have a dark sense of humor. And I find that comedy and horror are not that far apart.
Hmm.
They're pretty close. So, I like with a book like Chew, where we were juggling so many things. You had your horror, you had your comedy, you had you had different kinds of comedy. Frankly, you had
Hmm.
the physical comedy, the slapstick. You had like the more subtle things, like the Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think I've just gotten pretty good at juggling. It's just, I mean, I look at life. I mean, life itself is pretty complex, and we come in and out of different moods and different genres all the time in our day to day.
Hmm.
You can go from crying to laughing in a heartbeat. Things are very there is no clear line between these things. So whenever I kind of approach the comic page and the story, I kind of treat it that way. Again, like a really like organic way. Like I
Yeah.
find humor just kind of shows up sometimes, and it's not something I have to make happen. And I mean, when you're dealing with my visual style, my art style, uh, again, the humor just kind of shows up sometimes because naturally I see it in my head that way. It comes to the page that way, and horror is no different. I mean, if horror is actually very easy for me to write. Horror is probably the most easy thing for me to write,
Hmm.
which maybe that's concerning. I'm not sure, um, but I mean, it's very easy. I knew that I would start in a place where it was, like I think of it in terms of rhythm from the first issue onward, and I knew the first issue was going to be really complex. It's going to have a lot of moving parts. It's going to introduce all the different, there's going to be horror, and there's going to be this family thing, this warm and cuddly family thing with
Yeah.
some goofy humor. But I knew as the first arc went along, it was going to be a bit more benign. Like I wasn't gonna hit you with the hard horror in the first arc.
Yeah.
Like I was kind of saving it. Like I was really like uh, picking my spots. So I thought issue 5 would be the big moment at the end of that arc where I would drop. I drop a bomb, and you'd see something. You'd see something really horrific with the
Hmm.
Thorn character that you weren't expecting. But I knew that the next arc was going to be darker because we had established all this stuff. We established a foundation in the first arc. So second arc is going to be heavier. It's going to hit a little harder,
Hmm.
and it's going to go faster, which is what happened. So by the time the arc ends, uh, I think I surprised some people with how dark it went.
Sure. Yeah.
Because again, I think it was David Harper over at Sketch
Mm.
had said something about that I had been the comedy guy for so long. I was
Yeah.
the goofy like silly guy. But then in issue 9, when you see Thorn as she really is for the first time, it gets really dark really quickly, and
Yeah.
I think it freaked him out a little bit, which I took as a good thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I mean, and the more you go along, issue 15, I don't know if you've read that one yet.
Yes.
Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it gets pretty freaking heavy.
Right. For
Yeah,
sure. No, by that third arc, calling it the comedy book is like it's not that anymore. Like,
yeah,
and that's clearly like a conscious decision, I think, on
right.
on your part creatively. It's very effective. I guess how much going into it, how much did you want to move away from maybe that label? Like, is that like maybe not even like throw it away because obviously it's work you're proud of.
Mhm.
But how much it was in your head, like, I want to show I can do other things. I want to show there's more to me creatively.
It was very, very deliberate. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the first issue, the very first page, it starts off with a little goofy humor. It
Right.
starts off, and I mean, I thought it opening up with, dead chickens in a chicken yard was very fitting, coming from Chew, which was all about bird flus and chickens.
Yeah, yeah. The
Um,
Poyo wounds are still too open, right,
right,
for a lot of
right.
people.
It was perfect. It was the
Yeah.
perfect kind of way to bring in people who only knew me from this one thing and bring them into this thing. And it starts off kind of goofy with the two kids,
Yeah.
and then the very next page, it immediately gets really dark really
Hmm.
quickly. Um, so I think I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder because I wanted to establish that I could carry something very complex that was a bit heavier than Shu ever was.
Hmm.
I mean, Shu had some heavy moments, but for the most part, I think for the most part, I don't think I think I was kind of the goofy comedy guy who could draw anything.
Hmm.
I could draw a golem made out of spaghetti. You know, and I
Right.
did. I absolutely did, and I think I'm good at that. But I wanted to bring a completely different dynamic to who I was as a creator. So that's
Sure.
been my focus with Farmhand.
Nice. No, very cool. I think it comes across definitely in the work because it had that feel initially, and I'll admit, like, when I checked out the first issue, it was definitely like, oh, like, yeah, I love Rob's art on Chew. Like, I'm really curious to see what he can do, trying to do it all, because that's
Mhm,
something we see in comics like every now and again, right? Where
mhm,
someone who's previously known as an artist is like, okay, they're going to progress into telling their own stories. What does that look like? And in your case, it's like there's a clear progression, I think, which is cool to see, of like, oh, this is you when you're on your own. Like, this
right.
is, you do have a different storytelling sensibility, even though it's very much like it could fit in a almost shared universe with Chew, I think,
Yeah.
like there's obviously those sensibilities don't totally go away.
Mhm.
Which
And
is
we
awesome.
actually we talked about it. I mean, John and I kind of there's some seeds. I mean, again, another pun. There's some seeds in Farmhand for some potential crossover.
Yeah.
Um, and there's some stuff in it that no one has caught, I don't think,
Oh,
uh,
interesting. Yeah.
in there. So I think we've talked about doing a crossover. I mean, we just did a crossover with Chew and Outer Darkness, John's
Yeah.
other book.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of time. We've already talked about doing maybe a one shot Chew Farmhand, maybe kind of like a flip book, kind of how we did Chew and Revival back in the
Yeah.
day.
Right.
So yeah, it could cross over pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. It would work pretty smoothly. I would look forward to that a lot. So you mentioned John and you collaborated on the Outer Darkness Chew crossover not too long ago, and the writer John Layman is now he's launching a Chew CHU
Yeah.
series coming from Image. What's it like for you to not be a part of that? Is there or like obviously like
Mhm.
your collaborators and I take it still friends. What is it weird to see like the Chew universe continuing while you're kind of off doing your own thing, or did you want to have a part of that, or like what's your experience there?
We talked about it. I mean,
Yeah,
everything. I mean, way back. I mean, whenever Chew finished, I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, and I knew that I always knew. I mean, before I even started working on Chew in 2008, I was always writing my own stuff,
yeah,
um, and I always intended to get back to that, and hopefully use the Chew fan base that we got and kind of like build upon that.
hmm,
Um, but I was terrified. It's scary to kind of take that leap,
yeah,
especially when I've been comfortable for the last 8 years doing Chew.
right,
So I was asking John like crazy, like, hey, what else you got? Maybe we can do something else.
yeah,
And he had nothing for me. He actually had Chew Outer Darkness. I think he wrote Chew Outer Darkness before we finished Chew. I could be wrong.
oh, interesting, yeah,
It's been sitting around for years, and it didn't feel like my thing. Like I think Chan did a way better job than I would have done carrying that story.
hmm,
Um, but I so he by the time he came back with a Chew story, I was already working on Farmhand.
yeah,
So eventually he came back with Chew CHU, and I loved it. And I did do a couple character sketches for it,
sure,
but it wasn't the right time. I mean, I have so much other stuff going on, and Dan Boltwood, who's the artist on Chew, is phenomenal. I've been a fan of his. I mean, for years.
yeah,
He brings a very different thing to the table, but that's a good thing.
sure,
Um,
yeah,
but I mean, I would be lying if I said it's not like it is kind of like having a kid. I have 3 kids.
yeah,
My daughter is 4. Well, she's 6 now. And I imagine it's probably a lot like having a daughter, and then the guy shows up to take her out on the first date.
yeah, okay,
Like, take care of my daughter. Like,
right,
like seriously. Um,
yeah,
so
that
that's
sense
kind
of
of
love and care and all that you put into it for sure,
right.
yeah,
Like, we built this thing for a really long time. I mean, John and I spoke on a daily basis every day for
yeah.
8 years building this thing, and yeah, and I'm a little protective, but I mean, it's in good hands. But it is a little weird to see new Chew work come out, and it's not mine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I think it would have to be. No, it's
yeah,
that's interesting. Um, well, I look forward to the farmhand CHU potential crossover that's coming
yeah.
because that could be a good deal.
Mhm.
Um, I was going to ask you as well, like, so you had this really interesting experience where you're pretty singularly focused on a work that was critically acclaimed, Eisner nominated. I believe you guys won a handful of Eisners for the work, and now you come into the market not quite a decade later, right? But
Mhm.
Farmhand's launching into like comics are in a slightly different place, right? Than when Chew
Yeah.
launched. What you mentioned personally, like okay, the business side, getting used to being the sole owner of this property. What do you see changing in the like the overall market like landscape for comics now that you're running the Farmhand show yourself? Like, what is it to you that seems the most different? What has changed for the better, the worse, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a hard question.
Sure.
It's a completely different market. I mean, I think we hit in 2009. We hit at just the right moment, and I think we were at in 2009 we were in event fatigue.
Yeah.
um I think there was like this wave of events that Marvel was doing. I think it was like Secret Invasion and Dark Reign and all this. It was event on top of event on top of event, and everything
Yeah.
was really serious and very dark.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then we came out as this goofy little like cannibal cop book, and it kind of did way more than we ever expected. And then right
Sure.
after that, like the image revolution happened,
Yeah.
and it's I don't know how to answer that honestly. I mean, I think obviously there's more work than there's more quality work than there's ever been.
Mhm.
Um, the tricky thing about that is, you know, we're more competitive than we've ever been also, and we're
Yeah.
not just competing with comics. We're competing with Netflix. We're competing with everything.
Right.
We're competing with online news. I mean, it's just, I mean, there's only so many hours in the day, and people have so little attention, and
Yeah.
we're all fighting for it.
Yeah.
So I think it feels like to me that people are going to start investing more in creators and less on franchises.
Mm.
Because I've had a lot of conversations. I mean, even after finishing Shoe, and especially in the last couple of years, when I go to a convention or I talk to another pro, that pro is sweating about what am I like? What is next? Like,
Mhm.
how do I grab my people? The people that are the most loyal to me, that buy all my stuff, no matter what I put out, and how
Right.
do I lock them in?
Yeah.
So I think I could see more self publishing. I could see probably more experimentation with, and I'm speaking, I mean, purely also, I mean, not just from talking to other people, but also stuff I'm thinking about,
Sure. Yeah.
experimentation with just possibly digital comics, maybe subscription models,
Yeah.
uh, you know, trying to just cut out the BS and just deal directly with my people.
Yeah.
Um, but beyond that, honestly, I'm a little concerned at the direct market. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know. I'm worried because I talk to a lot of content creators.
Tell me, give me all the direct market answers right
Well,
now.
I'm a little worried because I talk. I feel like I'm talking to more and more comic creators who've made a living at this for a really long time,
Yeah.
and more of them are really concerned
Right.
about, I don't know if I can keep doing comics. I may move on to video games, or I may move on to something in Hollywood or something.
Sure. Right.
That concerns me, especially coming out of a COVID situation with shops closing like crazy. Um, I don't know what's next, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's an interesting time, because they just had the Comic-Con and book scan numbers and all that stuff. I don't know if you're how closely you're following that, but, like, 2019 was a record-setting year in terms of comic sales, but then so much of that is young adult or even kids type stuff, right? With, like, artists like, Dave Pilkey on Dogman is this, like, powerhouse phenomena. It's really interesting the way comics aren't what I think of them as a big superhero fan growing up, and as now, that image revolution being like really formative in me getting into comics as a going to the shop reader, right? Like the actual market isn't necessarily that, even though that still exists and still does business, right?
Yeah,
You mentioned, like, these like subscription model, or obviously just like self-published Kickstarter type stuff, which I'm increasingly feeling almost like I have to back Kickstarter stuff, not just because I want to support certain creators, but also like it becomes this thing where it has a rarity to it that is
yeah,
hard to capture, where it's like, oh,
mhm,
this won't be on Comixology, or I can't get this in my shop. I have
right,
to back it or I don't get it,
yeah. And
which is interesting.
yeah, I think there's an urgency that I think people kind of miss in the direct market.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of fans that they they'll move over from getting the floppies and they'll go to the trades, which
Yep.
is cool. I get that. The problem is if too many people do that, we may not get a trade
Hmm. Hmm.
because I mean the floppies keep the lights on. So if you're jumping over, uh, you know, I don't know what to tell you. You may not get a book.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so I think having people realize the that it is an urgent situation. That if you really do believe uh, in a creator or the story they're telling, you need to invest. And I think that is the beauty of a Kickstarter. You get to see, well, if I don't jump on this bandwagon now, there is no other opportunity to do
Right.
that. That goes a long way, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, it's a perpetual tug and pull. I think it'll
Yeah.
be like I think certainly I'm a believer that comics are here to stay.
Hmm.
Creative voices, that are gonna find a way. It's just a matter of okay, what is that actual outlet? Because I don't think anyone right now would say like no change is coming. I think especially like you mentioned, the pandemic is eye opening for
Yep.
literally every single business. I work in marketing and it's like I cover a lot of sectors. They're all changing. Like this
Mhm.
is, it's huge. And comics are not immune to that, obviously, as we've seen. So,
Yeah. And
uh,
retailers need to be open to experimenting also.
mhm,
I mean, as soon as the COVID lockdown happened, I mean, there were tons of kind of distribution groups that showed up, just kind of people just talking about how do we fix this? How do we fix this?
right.
And there seemed to be an openness to experiment and try new things. But then the second someone would kind of chime in with a new thing, he would immediately get shut down.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because I mean, old dogs don't want to learn a new trick a lot of times.
Yeah. That's just easier, right? It's easier to
Exactly,
keep doing what
exactly.
you've done. Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, it's a new day. Yeah, I think we need to experiment with something different, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. No, and there have been a lot of cool experiments that have launched in the wake of this. I've definitely gotten more into like Instagram comics and like Ice Cream Man creative team was doing that quarantine comics thing where
Mhm.
they're doing like 3 4 page stories. So there were all these little things like creativity developed right in that open space.
Yeah,
So yeah, I look forward to seeing what you wind up tackling there because obviously it's not an easy answer, but there's
right.
there's opportunity for sure.
Mhm.
So you're currently on a break. 15 issues of Farmhand are out. Well, it probably doesn't feel like a break, but
No, no.
as a reader,
Yeah, yeah. No, I was planning. I mean, the last 15 issues have been it's been crazy,
yeah,
and good, and I've learned a lot. But I was looking forward to taking a nice chunk of time away and
yeah.
just kind of recharging. And I swear to you, that as soon as I approved the files for the new issue, uh, and I was getting ready for my vacation. Exactly that day is when they declared the pandemic, and they shut
Oh
down
man,
schools.
yeah,
So my kids have been home ever since. So
sure,
it
yeah,
hasn't been much of a break. Yeah, it's been a hairy.
right. Oh yeah, totally. Well, and that's just, I mean, that changes everything. Like,
Yeah, it
just
does.
I have young kids, so we're in that stage where we're like, well, they were home anyway. They were here with us.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, home from school and just totally changed. When so 15 issues are out. There's a hiatus now while you're gearing back up and getting are you planning to run to 30? Is that the ultimate
Yeah,
plan?
I'm thinking 25 to 30 issues.
25 to 30? Cool. When are you planning on 16 coming back for readers?
I think it'll be early next year.
Early
Um,
next year?
yeah, I mean, I kind of have a pretty good roadmap where I'm going. I know my ending. I've kind of known my ending from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of kind of getting there the way I want to. So yeah, I'd say early next year.
Cool. Cool. What else do you have in the works? Obviously you're working on the pilot for AMC, which I'm sure is huge undertaking and very exciting. Anything else that you're like super excited about?
Yeah, nothing I can really talk about though.
It's all
uh,
all secret,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I have a couple things. I have something I'm actually working on for the book market,
Oh, cool.
which should be interesting. Just because again, it is a completely new market for me.
Yeah.
Um, I
Is that a
need.
calculated decision on your part to be like, I
Oh,
want to explore some of
yeah,
this? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean and this was actually before the COVID hit, which is I just kind of saw, yeah, the industry had shifted a bunch, and I've been completely 100% comics for the last 10 years, or
Yeah.
over 10 years, 12 years at this point. And it just felt like a good opportunity to kind of stretch my legs and see what happens when I dip my toes into that industry. And
Sure.
it so far it's been really positive. So we'll see. But yeah, there's that.
Cool.
Um, what else? We have some more stuff kind of kicking around with Chew, a possible Chew adaptation.
Okay.
So fingers crossed on that. If that works out, I think it'll be really special.
Yeah.
And yeah, I always have at least a handful of other kind of small projects that I'm kind of percolating on. It's just a matter of when do I put them out. One of them, like I said, is a self-published thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work, but I'm a big fan of really nice production design. like a really well made kind of textural book. So like I actually have an idea for a really it would be probably a pretty small print run. Um, are you familiar with I think his name's I'm gonna butcher his pronunciation, but Michel Fife or Fife.
Yeah, Copra, right?
Yeah. Um, I love the fact that he was self-publishing on Etsy way before he got picked up by Image,
Yeah,
uh, and I love the fact that he was literally doing everything from the ground up, including stapling the book and folding the book and
yeah.
stamping every book. I mean, that's incredible. And my background was I worked a copy shop for years, so I love getting my hands into this stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, so whatever I did in terms of self-publishing, it would be a very small print run, but my hands would be on every one of them.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, so that's something I've been kicking around for a while too.
Cool. Cool. No, that's very exciting. Yeah, it sounds like that that level of craft going into it is like super exciting, but also it's got to be a little intimidating in terms of like, oh man, I got to like literally build this. But I'm sure there's a creative itch that
Oh
can
yeah, yeah.
scratch too,
It's
right?
the hard part is a time investment.
Yeah,
If you it's opportunity cost. If you're working on one thing here, you can't be working on this over here.
for sure.
But
Right.
just carving out the right amount of time to make the work and then do all the other parts that go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm curious too. You mentioned the book market thing, which we'll see hopefully here soon. But you mentioned you have younger kids. Do you find yourself gravitating towards wanting to make stories for them, like in that younger realm, or is that just not the type of story you create
I,
necessarily?
my oldest who's 9, he keeps asking me,
Yeah.
like, when are you gonna make something that I can actually read?
Right.
I'll work on it. I don't know yet. But everything, like, generally speaking, all of the pitches, or the majority of the pitches I've been working on, and the ideas that come to me uh tend to be a bit darker, a bit more mature.
Sure.
I'm 38. I'm coming up on 40. We have 3 small kids at home, so like, there's a lot of like heavier things that typically are like on my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's been bugging me about it, so I think it's gonna have to happen probably in the next few years.
Right. Right.
Mm.
Good deal. All right. Good. That'll be a win for him for sure. Cool. What kind of taking a different gear here. What is a comic or a work coming out right now that you think more people should be reading?
Man, what should people be reading? That's hard because I'm not plugged in all that much right now.
Sure.
Uh, I can tell you the books, some of my favorite books, period, that I think I'm always surprised people don't know about these books.
Yeah.
Uh, Lock and Key, Joe Hill and Gabe Rodriguez over at
Yep.
IDW.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess more people know about it now since it was a TV show.
Hmm.
Uh, but amazing, amazing series. Also, Southern Bastards, Jason Aaron, which is
Hmm.
again one of my favorite books.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things about that book and how unique and self-contained and raw it was,
Right.
that really inspired a lot of what I do in Farmhand. I'd
Interesting.
say that book and Paper Girls from Brian K. Vaughan.
Yeah.
Those are probably the 2 books, and Fell by Warren Ellis.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Okay.
that was another one that was just super, super influential to me and just kind of showed me what's possible. Uh, in as far as making not just a comic, but making an actual like experience, like,
Mm.
like cover to cover, one vision.
Yeah.
Kind of what I've been doing with Farmhand. From cover to cover. There's no ads in the back. All the only ads that are in the back are stuff that are tied to Farmhand or Chew in some way.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, those are kind of my big ones. But Head Lopper by Andrew Mclean
Mm.
is another fantastic book. So those are my big
Okay.
ones.
I got to read that. I haven't made it to. I've heard of Headlopper, but I haven't
It,
gotten around
it's
to it.
it's a master class in storytelling.
Yeah.
I mean, just I mean, his layouts, everything just seems so effortless. And I kind of put him and Capra in the same kind of category. There's
Okay.
just there's a rawness to it that honestly reminds me of when I first started making comics.
Mm.
I mean, my first comic I made when I was like 9,
Yeah.
and it was just construction paper stapled together with like color pencils.
Right.
But
Just
there's a
having fun doing whatever you can think of, right? Yeah.
right. There's an experimentation because you have no expectations other than I'm gonna mess with this, and something's gonna come out of it. When I look at Copra and Head Lopper, I see the same kind of experimentation. There's just a raw play and a love for what they're making, and you can tell like they're not really focused on, well, is this going to sell? Like, who's going to buy this? You could tell they're just focused on making this thing, and
Right.
that
Right.
that it's very inspiring to me.
Yeah. Yeah. You can always sense that passion. Very cool. All right. Good deal. Is there anything else before we wrap that you want to make sure people know about?
No, go to my website and subscribe to my newsletter. It's robguillory.com.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram, Rob_Guillory, and I'm also on Facebook. I think it's just Rob.Guillory.
Good deal. Good deal. Thanks so much, Rob. I'm looking forward to the return of Farmhand. For those people listening who haven't read it and listened to all this, definitely go read the book. It's better even than this conversation, if you can believe it. So,
Unbelievable.
yeah, it's a very good book. Thanks so much, Rob. This was super fun, and I appreciate your time.